Texas, welcome to the Texas HomeSchool Conventions Show. The show is live, so please comment during the show.
Each week, we empower today's homeschool families with invaluable resources. Texas HomeSchool Convention is more than a podcast show. We're a vibrant community, a gathering of people supporting one another in the incredible journey of raising the next generation of world changers.
Now, grab a seat, get comfortable, and join families throughout the United States and around the world as we dive into today's conversation. Live from Texas is the Texas HomeSchool Conventions Show.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Welcome in. Welcome in. I am so glad you are joining us today. I just spent the last 30 minutes outside, and if you have not checked the weather for next week in Texas, bring out the dresses, bring out the shorts. It is getting toasty, and that means that we are heading into summer, and this is going to be a beautiful segue for, you know what that means, first weekend of June. Our community meets together in the Woodlands for our final convention of the season, and we would love to have you join us. So my name is Chelsea. I come to your video screen every week. Video screen, I sound like I'm 80 years old. I come to your computer, your Instagram, wherever you're watching from, each week to talk and bring resources to you. So last week we had Trail Life CEO Mark Hancock with us. Fantastic conversation on the differences between raising godly boys and girls, and that there is a difference. Boys are not just, what do you call them, dysfunctional girls. So if you didn't get to listen to that conversation, would highly recommend you go back and listen to it. I'd love to take a minute and talk about convention. So we are 6 days away from convention kicking off. In fact, this time next week, instead of joining you at 10 a.m., I'd be sitting in a keynote listening to Melanie Hempy from Screen Strong talking about the teen mental health crisis and how technology is playing a huge part in that. So join us in the Woodlands. It's going to be fantastic. Some insider information, guys. We have sold 1,500 tickets between last Friday and this Friday. Kids convention is sold out. Teen convention sold out. And I'm praying that we go ahead and sell out. So if you are that classic homeschool family, yes, I know you guys are out there and you're waiting until the last minute. This is officially your last minute. Go ahead and head to convention.thsc.org. Get your tickets while we still have them. Because we can't guarantee tickets at the door next week, and we're going to be so excited to see you in person. No matter where you're watching that from, drop something in the comments. This show is live. We'd love to say hello to you. Sean Ray, happy Friday. Thanks for joining us. I was glad. I think I got to meet you in Fort Worth, but if I didn't, it was a pleasure. You've been watching with us every week, so thanks for being here again. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to my guest this week. So my guest this week is Thara Reinitz. She is a second-generation homeschool mom and is just owning the space right now in all things homeschool. I love her description. She calls herself a crunchy mom. We'll get into that if you're not sure what that definition means. But is just right in the middle of her homeschooling journey, being a wife, being a mom, and homeschool. And so we're going to get to talk with her. And she's also been a part of our convention for, goodness, a long time. Anytime I talk to someone, they're like, have you talked to Thara? She's just an OG in our space. So tag a friend, share this, subscribe to our YouTube if you're watching there. And without further ado, let me bring in my friend Thara.
Hey.
Hello, good morning.
I love you call me an OG in your space. That's awesome.
I mean, it is every time, because this will be my fourth convention, second year on staff. And every time we start, they're like, get with Thara, talk with Thara. So you were like, everybody speaks so highly of you and all that you bring to our convention, and not just our convention, but the world of homeschooling. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah, well, I am really passionate about just homeschooling, encouraging people in general. And I think convention is a really good way to do that. So that makes sense. The two passions combined. Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome. All right. Well, I know most people have probably never met you or never heard of you. So I'd love for you to tell us who you are, about your family, where you're at in Texas, all of the things.
So I live in Lubbock, and I am a mom of 4. My kids are 12, 10, 7, and 5. They just had birthdays, so I have to think about the new ages. And I am a second generation homeschool mom, which just basically means I was homeschooled and now I homeschool. That's the easy way to explain that. And yeah, we have been homeschooling from the beginning, and I'm trying to think what else is interesting that I should tell you. I'm just a normal mom, normal homeschool mom that I do have, like I said, a lot of passion for helping families homeschool. And I think one reason, which we'll probably get into later, is because since I was homeschooled and then I went to school to be a teacher, I kind of felt like, oh, this is going to be so much easier for me because I've, been trained on all these fronts, and then just learning like, wow, that's not how that works. This is a sanctifying and amazing experience. So anyway, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. I love that. So let's just jump right in. So you were homeschooled and then you went to school to be a teacher. Was that so you could like equip yourself to homeschool your kids, or were you thinking about going a different direction with them?
No, pretty much. I knew I wanted to homeschool because I worked in the schools, and I saw some really amazing kids and even some really amazing teachers, but just the overall environment and some of the things that kids were exposed to through their families and other just bad situations. I knew I wanted to homeschool. I also loved my homeschool experience. So that definitely played a part, just the ability to have freedom in learning, to like my mom was able to very much cater our learning to our interests and our strengths and weaknesses. So I always knew, but I originally thought I might be like a teacher on the mission field. And so kind of preparing for that. But I also knew, if that doesn't happen, like even if they were to make homeschooling illegal, surely they could not tell me that you can teach in the school, but you can't teach your own kids. So that was kind of my thought there, but not knowing at all what the Lord's plan was, just kind of moving forward, the best I could. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. I'd love to ask you just a question right out of the gate, going off the show notes, but we get emails, hundreds of emails a day, if not a week, of parents who are so kind of fed up with the school system that they're pulling their kids out and withdrawing, and most are kind of taking the summer to wrap their head around this like huge decision that they've just made. Human nature tends to romanticize things, or like makes it like, oh, school system's so bad, so homeschooling is going to be this amazing, glorious experience. What advice would you give those parents who are in that, like who said, I just withdrew my kids, we're so fed up with the school system and what they've done? What advice would you give them for this summer as they get prepped and set to start the new school year? And what advice would you give them for that like first week or second week when they're like, oh, this is not what I thought it would be?
So the first thing for the summer, I would say, is just really, some people call it like deschooling, but just really take some time to get to know each other as a family, get to know your kids, create your own rhythms in your home without having to worry about any kind of academic portion. Because the truth is, you will be learning in the summer as well. It just maybe looks different. Maybe it's not sitting down and having some, specific curriculum in front of you, but you'll still be learning. As part of that deschooling, the two things I really encourage is like spend time outside, do tons of fun things outside, whether it's swimming or museums or whatever your family's into, do that just to reconnect. And then the other thing that I think is so wonderful for just connection is reading together, reading aloud, especially. And a lot of people, you kind of just naturally stop reading aloud to your kids when they start being able to read really well. But there's so much research talking about the benefits of reading aloud as a family, even just, mom to kids, or even if everyone can't be there, and it does not have to be this idyllic, we're all sitting by the fire and whatever. Like, honestly, a lot of our read aloud time happens at the dinner table. Kids are eating, and like my husband and I, one of us will finish and then we'll grab a book and just read a chapter. And it's still really good connection time. So that's the first thing I would say this summer, make the focus connection. And then as far as advice moving forward, I think the main thing that I would say is you're not recreating public school at home.
Mm,
And I think that's the hardest. Once you can wrap your head around that, it's so much easier because I think we just have, even me who was homeschooled, we have certain ideas about what learning looks like, certain ideas about what school looks like, and just having to set those aside and realize, no, that's not how, this is not the box that everyone has to be in. And we can do this a different way. And part of that is, if you wanted the school setting, then you should go to the school setting because they have everything set up just right, with the desk and the whole thing. And a lot of us, I remember my mom, she talks about when she started homeschooling, she got the little desks and the whole thing. And it's fun and it's cute, but it's not anywhere that we did our school time. Like we were at the table or on our beds or in the living room or whatever. So we basically never used those desks. And they're really not, that's not what we're going for. We're wanting to be able to do something different and where we can completely customize. Some kids need to be moving all the time while they're learning, and get them an exercise ball and put it on there. And I have a child who really hates work pages of any kind. It's just like the worst torture. Can be talking about a topic and it's great. I put something like a work page in front of him and it's like, the worst ever that I could have done. So that's caused me to have to really rethink okay, what does learning look like? Does it have to be this page that I check and that, I can record and see, or could he tell me the things that he's learned? Could we be outside doing this differently? And it doesn't mean being neglectful in any way, but just rethinking what learning actually looks like. So those are, I guess, the two things that I would say. But honestly, if you can do those two things, you are light years ahead of so many of us starting out. So sounds simple and it's not so simple.
Well, like you said, it's going against our nature of what we know for school, right? Because most of the homeschool parents we see, they weren't homeschooled themselves. So they're going from, I had to sit in a desk for 6 hours a day and I turned out okay. So we try and recreate. Mark Hancock told me last week they did the same thing. They went and bought desks, and then they said it was like a second closet for them. They just hung all of their clothes on them, and that's what it did. So I think everybody has that story in that moment of let's go get the desk, let's get the whiteboard, let's redo a whole room of the house. But talk us through what your life looks like. So you're homeschooling a wide variety of ages. It sounds like you have a lot of different learning personalities. What does a typical homeschool day look like for you guys?
Well, I can't really say a typical day because I haven't really found one yet, but because things are always different. But pretty much in the morning, we try to have kind of a morning schedule of, I actually got this from Jamie Erickson. What is her Unlikely Homeschooler? I was reading a blog post of hers and it was so fantastic. We live in a 2-story house. So often in the morning, I'm yelling, for people to come down, and it just didn't start our day the way I wanted to, with guys, come down, where are you? Whatever. Anyway. And I read this blog post and she suggested picking a song for either the semester or the school year. And the kids know that when this song comes on, they have until the end of that song. That's kind of the warning, you have until the end of this song to have completed whatever it is that your family, decides needs to be done and be at the table. And so I incorporated that. It has been life-changing in terms of just starting our day. And it doesn't always happen perfectly, but it is an expectation that we all know this happens. I'm not yelling. Anyway, so we usually start with that. Kids come to the table, we have breakfast, and we do our kind of Bible time during that time. And we also watch World Watch. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's something we just recently added as the kids have gotten older, but it's basically kids news. And so sometimes if it's a little bit heavier, they'll have a warning, this story may not be appropriate for younger kids or whatever, but my kids have loved it. It's also brought a lot of really great discussion. And then after that, we usually, I try to go outside because I realized early on I was all ready for everyone to sit down and let's, read and do quiet things. And it's the time of day that they have the most energy and are not wanting to sit down and be still. They just woke up and ate and now they want to get energy out. So we usually like either take a walk or ride bikes or do something outside to get some energy out. And then after that, it's kind of, who knows, like we come back and then just go through various like math or reading, that kind of thing. But honestly, it really doesn't take as long as people think to get through some of this. I think the most challenging part is just figuring out for your family the schedule of like I have 2 kids that are learning to read right now, which obviously need my individual instruction. How do I fit them in with the other kids when they need me? And so just kind of figuring out that rhythm. But I'm learning more and more. I was just reading in Mark this morning, and as I was praying about like this conversation and just what to share, and it was so cool. The Lord just reminded me the story of Peter in the garden when Jesus is going to be taken, and Peter pulls out his sword, and it's kind of an example of him just in his own strength. He's going to save the day. He's going to do what needs to be done. And as I was thinking about this conversation, just thinking about how often I do that in my homeschooling or even parenting, instead of seeking the Lord, stopping and praying about like, what should we do today? What do you have for us? What about this situation where I'm struggling? I like pull out my sword and I'm ready to like take it on myself. And I feel the responsibility of, I need to find the right curriculum or the right rhythm or the right schedule or the right, whatever it is. And it's kind of all on me. And that's not true. And it also really sucks the joy out of your parenting and out of your homeschooling when we do that. So even as I talk about this schedule, like in my mind, it would just be so wonderful if all of that happened, just as I planned, but so often it doesn't. And at the end of the day, I think my frustration often comes from just honestly wanting my own way, like this is what I planned. This is what I wanted to be done. And it's not happening the way I wanted, instead of stopping and saying like, what, Lord, what do you want for today? And really looking at my kids and saying, what are their needs today or this week or whatever, rather than what have I planned, for this time? Because often when we're planning things months and months beforehand or a curriculum or whatever, that's not taking into account, are the kids feeling well? Did they go to bed late? Have we had like big things going on in our lives that maybe they're not ready? They need to go, maybe we need some more connection, or maybe we need some time outside, or maybe we just need to take a day off. And that's not something that's planned in a curriculum schedule, but it's something so beautiful that as we as homeschoolers, we can see that and we can do that when it's needed, and just not feel the responsibility that all this is on me and I have to make it work. But we have a higher power that is ultimately like, he's the one who knows what our kids are going to do, what they're going to grow up to be and what they're going to need. And every education has gaps. We're okay with professional gaps, but the teacher doesn't call us and tell us all the things they didn't do, all the things in her plan that never happened, how far they got in the book. But we trust that. But then when we start homeschooling, we're like, we have to finish every book, check off everything. And that's just not true. So that was kind of a long explanation, but.
No, that's so good. There's so much wisdom in that. Like, this will be a conversation I go back and re-listen to, because I want to highlight what you said. Like, most of our frustration and disappointment comes because we as parents aren't getting our own way. And like, I'm a millennial mom. I have a toddler at home, and I end most of my days, and I'm like, we didn't get that Instagrammable breakfast with the Bible study, and my toddler's just beautifully sitting at the table, not throwing strawberries, and and we crave that like perfection that we see online that is not real. And I love that you're so quick to just say like, not every day does the music wake them up and they come downstairs happy to be awake, or things happen. And I think that's the freedom from homeschooling that we sometimes miss. Like we think, oh, we get to do this, but then in the mundaneness of it, once a few months have passed or years have passed, we forget like you get to set the pace. You get to be the thermostat in the home as the mom or the dad, whoever's doing this, to say, this is what's best for the family in this season. And I know all the type A personalities are probably like, I can't plan 6 months out. What do I do if I can't plan 6 months out? But
I mean, and I think
love
you can if you
Right.
hold that loosely, right? I think plans
Right.
are good, and it's good for us to think ahead and to be organized and to ask ourselves what worked last year and what didn't, or if in the case if you're bringing your kids out of school, what is it that you didn't like? What was your kid struggling with? Okay, so let's not do those things, or change that so that it works, but then also hold that plan so loosely to understand that like it may not go the way that you think, but what in life does? Honestly, nothing.
Right.
You just have this like just holding it so tightly. And I think that's because we really feel like it's all on us. Like we've taken on not just the parenting role, but now we're the teacher. And so their entire education, it rests on succeed or fail. It's our fault, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
that's not true at all.
That's
I
really
think,
good.
yeah. And this is something I'm still learning, honestly. And speaking of convention, that's one of the reasons that I love going, because it's not, I'm in my, I can't remember, 8th year of homeschooling or something like that, because I actually homeschooled some other relatives before having my own kids. And so I'm not usually going to convention and hearing something like, this is brand new information. I have literally never heard this before. Sometimes it will happen, but that's not the bulk of what I'm going in. But now it's just so much of that redirecting back to the why of, why I'm doing this and what really matters, because it's so easy to get caught up in, like you said, looking at whether it's Instagram or just the other homeschool mom that and you see her strengths, and we kind of assume that people have our strengths plus the strengths that we see. So they're like the perfect mom, they're the perfect person because they're doing all the things we're doing well, plus all these other things that we see. And that's just not the case. But just instead of, it's good to learn about the how, and that's super necessary and valuable, but I think more focus on the why and what's really, really important. And Todd Wilson does a talk about this that I recently heard, and it was so good. Just remembering, like, at the end of the day, why are you doing this? And are those goals being met? And if they're not, stop and take a look at what you've set up and what's impeding that, And I've done that. Man, I remember a couple years ago, especially, I was like the schedule police at the end of the year. I was frustrated every day because I was looking at my list and nothing was getting checked off. And I was so frustrated. And I was like, having the attitude of like, even fun things, if the kids were, not into it, I'm like, no, sit down. We are doing this fun thing. I don't care what, like, we are doing this because it is on my schedule and it's going to be fun. So sit down and have fun, like, not at all what I want, not at all what I even thought of when I was planning that, but I had become so wrapped around just the schedule and the plan that I lost completely the why of all of it. And also they weren't learning anything because it was not fun at all. I mean, do this, we have to get all this done anyway. And just the Lord reminded me, even in my planning, so I actually switched to where I write down now what we've done after we've done it. So that way I can also include things like, we made cookies today. We brought a family a meal. We planted a garden. We rode bikes, things that would never have been on my schedule, things that wouldn't be in a curriculum, even the best curriculum, but they matter. And I want to remember those things, and I want to value those things. I say I value them, but then in my actual time that I'm prioritizing, I wasn't valuing it because it it wasn't being checked off on my list. And I don't even really consider myself a big list checker, but it's just very easy to fall into that. And so I started writing things down after, and it was so freeing. I had a basic understanding of like, these are some things that, you know, I want to cover this year. But then after I had made that, I didn't go back to, you know, read chapter so-and-so on this day and read chapter, because you know what happens? You get one day off, you're behind now forever, you know, and go back and make that up. But who is not in a season where stuff happens and they end up getting behind? And it just was so discouraging. And then all my focus became on that. And I lost completely the joy of spending time with my kids. And I honestly had to go back to them and just say, like, I'm really sorry. And I want you to know, I love homeschooling. I love spending time with you. And I know the last several weeks, I have not given that impression. You know, I have made it feel like I do not enjoy this. I'm frustrated. I'm getting angry really easily. And again, going back to ultimately, it was my own not getting my way. I was like the toddler, you know, that's not getting but it just seemed, you know, the adult version. So it seemed so much more
control, I guess. I don't know.
Justify my fit, because it's so much more logical than mad about not getting a popsicle or whatever. But it was the same thing at the end of the day. So yeah, that's one thing I love about convention though, is just going and having those reminders. I feel like every single time I go, the Lord meets me there and is like, you needed to hear this. Even if I've heard it a bunch of times before, it's just such a good encouragement. And for parenting too. Like you said, you have a 2-year-old. I remember going when I had like a 2-year-old, and even here, I heard some things that I took into my parenting, and I'm so grateful. Because I wouldn't have known if I would have waited till my kids were school age. I would have missed some of those really important things, even like about reading aloud, about spending time outdoors, about different personalities and the way those are even seen in a 2-year-old, you know?
Yeah.
So it's so beneficial just in general, but also just so important.
Yeah, no, I love that. So oddly enough, we're about to be out of time, but I think we're just going to go over, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
This is so good. So if you're watching, thanks for being here, but continue because it's great.
We're having a great conversation here.
Yeah, you guys can stay or whatever you'd like. Let's talk about convention, because I called you the OG at the top, so it'd feel weird not to even get into it. We get emails often of like, why a homeschool convention? I've got my curriculum picked out. I feel confident on the survey. They say anyway, they feel confident in what they're doing. Why should people come to a convention if they on paper kind of have it all figured out for the upcoming school year? I mean, isn't it just a big curriculum fair kind of thing, or what can people really expect?
Well, I think actually, first of all, conventions have changed a lot. So if you were like me and were homeschooled and maybe you went to a convention with your parents, it's a whole different deal than it was. I mean, there are similarities, but I think to your point about, is it a big curriculum fair? I think it was a lot more when like my mom was going, and that's partly because the internet was new. There was very little option for, you know, you weren't buying curriculum online, and also there weren't even that many options. Like when my mom with me, when she first started homeschooling, I think there were like 3 math options, and you just chose one of the 3 options and
hoped it worked.
It worked, yeah. I have math PTSD because of that, but now there's so many options, and I actually love the exhibit hall because you get to go, touch, feel, talk to the expert who can tell you about that thing. It doesn't mean I think there are some people who are just, it's a sales pitch and that's all it is to them. But I think for the majority of people, they really care about homeschool families and families in general. And they have created something and they want it to work for you. And so they're going to be honest if you tell them, you know, your situation, maybe their product isn't the right fit for you, or maybe there's a way to modify it where maybe it could be good. But it is not just go and see curriculum. Although, like I said, I do enjoy being able to like the hands-on really see it, because they have samples online, but it's not the same as actually like seeing not just that book or that level, but all the levels, okay, well, what does the next grade look like? Maybe I like this one, but I want to see what it would look like continuing. So there's great things there. But then honestly, I feel like convention is really good for anybody who interacts with kids, because yes, there is the homeschooling component, and that is so encouraging. It's kind of like, teachers have teacher in service and continuing education, and that's a very valuable part of what they do. And I think we don't approach it that way. We kind of, again, try to just do it in our own strength, power through. And a lot of times you kind of don't know what you're missing until you go, and then you're like, wow, I needed this. And maybe it's the how. I have gone before and been introduced to a person or a curriculum or something that really helped me with an area that I was struggling in my actual homeschooling how. And then other times it's, like I said, the why of, does it really matter that your 6-year-old cannot read yet? No, it really doesn't. And I had that situation with my 7-year-old. And then I also ended up talking to some experts, or at least people who are ahead of me, who I learned like that's not even that unusual, for my situation. And so that was so encouraging. Instead of me leaving concerned and worried, I actually felt so much better about what was going on. And that's the nitty gritty, that's the how, whether you're being successful, somehow we always equate whether they can read or how well they can read with our success. But go to Sarah McKenzie. She talks a lot about the studies that say like when they read, by the time they're, I think it's like 10 or 11, they've all evened out, assuming that there's not like actual, learning disabilities. But anyway, whether you're a grandmother, whether you're a mom, whether you're a dad, an aunt, an uncle, you interact with kids, there's so much rich information just about kids, about parenting, about education, about learning, that honestly, I feel like even if your kids were in a public or private school, you could take away things and make your children's learning experience better just from that information. Even if you never decided to homeschool. Obviously, I would love for everyone to homeschool, and I think there's so much value there, but I know that that's not an option for everyone. And but still, I think, hearing people like Jenny Urich and Kathy Cook and just some of these people who have so much great information that doesn't even have to have anything to do with homeschooling. It can be just how kids learn, how their brain works, how best to help them in their learning, whether that be at home or somewhere else. So, and then on top of that, I love to meet friends there. We'll do like a mom's thing where we'll go with a group of moms, share a hotel room, get some time together. And I think just having that focused time, we can say, listen to a podcast or watch some, online video or whatever, but it's not the same as actually going, setting aside that time, saying this is important, and this is important to our family. This is important for my growth and encouragement. And I'm going to take this time and really just focus on that. And I feel like my mom always called it, I used to hear her tell other moms, it's her vitamin B shot. And I totally agree. It's that oomph that you need, because sometimes we get discouraged and we don't even know it. We're just going along, we're doing our thing, we're getting things done, and we don't even realize that we've become discouraged or have sort of lost our spark for what we're doing. And it just is so refreshing. You just go, and again, I feel like the Lord every time brings someone, I hear something, And I'm just like, yeah, that is exactly what I needed to hear. That's why I'm here. That's why I came, because I needed to hear that exact thing. And sometimes it's, you're doing a good job. And sometimes it's, hey, this is a way you could make this better, or anything in between,
Right. Just fresh ideas or just fresh opinions about where you're at. Because I'm sure most wives are like, for my husband to say it, it's great. You're doing a great job, hon. Or for the kids to say, thanks, mom. But to go and just get that fresh perspective, or just to step away from all of it, to get away from your own kitchen table, to sit in a new room, to change scenery, like, it's great. And that's why, we invite dad. We really encourage dad to come along, or the spouse, if it's dad homeschooling, and the mom, and the kids, to just, so they can be encouraged and reminded and be around thousands of other families who are doing the exact same thing you're doing.
Yeah.
And you said something earlier, there's always somebody that's a little bit ahead of you, and there's always someone that's behind you. And you get this beautiful place of being encouraged by those who have gone before you and saying, hey, your 7-year-old, they can't read, totally fine. It'll wash out by 10. But you also get to come and be that encouragement for those moms who have that deer in headlight look of saying, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Yep. And so it's this beautiful, beautiful thing. Both your cup is getting refreshed and you're getting to pour into others. And I think that's been my favorite thing to see, is just seeing the community and seeing moms come in Thursday morning with their wagons packed out. They've got all the kids and they've got that tired look on their face. But by the time they leave on Saturday, they're just like, this is exactly right place, right time, what I needed to hear. And most of them say the same thing you said. I didn't learn anything so new that I've never heard, but it brought back old truths, or brought back the why that I remember when I started and needed to hear it again. So I think that's really powerful. So we're a week away. Any last minute, like, if someone's listening and they're still on the fence about coming to convention, what would you say to that person?
Well, so one thing we do, it is awesome if dad can come, or like for me, it would be my husband come. But we kind of trade off. So one year I'll just go maybe with some other mom friends, or maybe just by myself. And then the next year we'll do more as a family. And that I think it takes the pressure off trying to like make it this big vacation fun event every single time. So first I would just remove all these expectations that it has to look this certain way or be this certain way. If you can come, like I'm coming to the Woodlands and I'm only going to get to be there for one day, but I'm going to make the most of that day that I'm there. And I totally trust that the Lord has stuff for me for that day that I need to hear and I'm going to be encouraged by. So first, remove all those expectations. And then also I would encourage people, go and try it out. Like, what really do you have to lose? I think you have so much to gain and very, very little to lose. It's affordable. It's very well organized. It's a great event. And ultimately, like, can we be too encouraged or have too much great information? I would say no. And also, I think you're going to be surprised at how much you learn and how much you needed that. Because again, different personalities, different people, they're going to get different things out of it. So if you're more of an extrovert, you're going to be super energized by all the people and all that. If you're an introvert, that's not going to be the energizing point. But maybe the time in your hotel room or on the drive home where you're processing all the things that the Lord has shown you, it's just going to completely energize you and help you realize where you need to go, what needs to change, what needs to happen in the future. And so I would just say, give it a try. You really, really have nothing to lose. And I think it also shows respect for what we're doing. Teachers, like I said, they have continuing education that they prioritize and it's required. We don't have that, but I think it shows respect for the time and energy and effort that we're putting in to our homes and to our children when we say, I'm going to take this time and really focus on what we're doing here, not just at my kitchen table, but actually like go and take some time. And we do that in so many other areas in terms of like occupation. but we kind of downplay that here. So I think it really, it's something so needed. And I think it really helps you prioritize and also recognize the importance of what you're doing. You know, this is not just a little addition to my parenting, although there is that component. I mean, homeschooling is very much parenting, like on steroids, but also it's saying what I'm doing is important, and it's important enough for me to take time to go and really pour into this, whether it's just you and your spouse, you and some girlfriends, you and your mom, you know, however that happens, but just taking that time, I think it's really, really important.
It's really good. That's a fresh perspective, because I think most of us try and think, okay, I've got to plan the vacation. This is going to be the thing. But to just think of it as an investment in yourself and that continuing education piece, I think is really fresh.
Well,
and if you look at it.
If you have older kids, especially, the vacation part might work, but especially when you have younger kids, you know, it's okay. Like vacation can happen later. Yeah, we've tried that, and sometimes it's great and all the pieces fall together, and sometimes it's like, why did we do this, you know? But don't worry about that part. It will come, you know.
Right.
Kids are getting older now, and I'm like, wow, everyone can put on their own clothes, you know.
There it is.
Yeah. Yep. But before that, yeah, it may not be your season to bring the whole family and make it a vacation, but that season will come. And if you have the habit of prioritizing that, I remember my parents actually didn't bring us to convention till we were much older. And I looked so forward to when we got to go, because I knew it was a special thing that they did all these years, and I couldn't wait for my turn to get to go. And this was before teen staff, before all the cool stuff. I was just going and sitting in the workshops and going into the exhibit hall, you know? So I think creating that habit, though, of investing in your homeschool and in your parenting and even in your marriage to a certain extent, if you're going as a couple, there's so much richness there. Like, do not underestimate the value of one night in a hotel room, you know? Like, I can say that fully, you know, from my own experience. Like, do not underestimate just the connection that you can have just having a little quiet and it's just you. And I say this, I love my children. This is in no way downplaying children or their absolute blessing, but sometimes you haven't had that time with your spouse, you know, and you don't realize it until you get there and you're like, wow, this is nice, you know?
Yeah.
And having those conversations, like, we don't always go to the same speaker. So then I get to hear, hey, what did you like about what you heard? Or what did you hear? Or what did you take away from that? Because homeschooling is family. So I have a personality. My husband has a personality, and his opinions and his things that he values are important in our homeschool. We would homeschool differently if he were the main one, but I can still incorporate those things that mean something to him. So, yeah.
Man, so good. So good.
You go on and on. You're easy to talk to.
Well, thank you. You are too. I didn't like you start some conversations and you're like, okay, this will be pulling teeth for 30 minutes, but this flew by so fast. We could talk for hours, but Thara, thank you for being on the show. So much wisdom. If you're just joining us, go back and start this from the beginning. I, as a mom with a toddler and then one on the way and all of that, like, I look up to people like you who are doing it, fighting the good fight, and right in the middle of everything that you're doing. So thank you for speaking wisdom. My generation needs to hear it. And we'll be excited to see you at convention. So thank you, Thara, so much for being on the show.
Come up and say hi.
Yes. Thank you. Awesome, Thara. Thank you so much. All right, guys, that was Thara. Whew, powerhouse. Love talking with her. So much wisdom. Just like we talked about, convention is not just a curriculum fair. Sure, we have 135 vendors. It's going to be amazing. But more than that, it's a time for us as a community, not just our Friday community, but as a homeschool community, to come together and to encourage, equip, and empower one another to do what God has called us to do, which is to raise up that next generation of world changers and leaders. So come and be a part of this starting next Thursday, 9 a.m. We've got workshops kicking off. We have 114 workshops over a 3-day span. So there's something for everybody, no matter where you're at in your homeschooling journey. We can't wait to see you there. As always, Spirit Media, thank you guys for hosting this podcast for us. Guys, we will not have a show here next Friday. Instead, we're going to go live Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, straight from the convention, bringing you all of the action, all of the excitement. And so we will see you again next week in the Woodlands, convention.thsc.org to get your tickets. And I will see you there. Have a great weekend, guys, and stay cool. It's going to get hot.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Texas Homeschool Convention Show.
We hope you are leaving encouraged, equipped, and empowered to take on this week as an intentional parent.
Be sure to subscribe on YouTube and never miss an episode.
No matter where you are in your journey, we are here to support you. Make sure to check out our website at conventions.thsc.org. Come join our community.
Did you know that we host in-person conventions each year in Texas? Join us in Fort Worth, Texas and Houston, Texas in 2024 as we celebrate 30 years of homeschooling freedom in Texas.
Use code SHOW10 for a 10% discount on your convention tickets.
This has been the Texas Homeschool Convention Show. Have a request for who you'd like to be on our show? Email us at events@thsc.org and tell us more. We always love hearing from you. We will see you next week.